Hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? Turn down that music a bit. It is rocking. Um, just for me, just for me. I've had so many like copyright things with music that's copyright free, and the spam is just ridiculous. And I've had a few people that prefer no music, so it's just me, just me. How's it going, everybody? We are hopefully to the end of this sort of like string of, it's almost like two strings. We worked on for a handful of weeks a template which allows or enables somebody to quickly spin up a system tray app, and we implemented both as much JavaScript as possible and as much Rust as possible, with the expectation that somebody would sort of like pick one or the other and then copy paste merge together where they see fit. We got that in a decent spot, and then I went ahead and created a repository off of that template, and that is what we've been working on for the past few weeks. Where did I put that tab? Here, well, let's go over. This is the repo that we've been working out of, and to be honest, I don't know that I've actually committed anything. I feel like it's been a handful of weeks. I can't believe it's June already. Almost July. Hey, Ciao, how's it going? Good to see you. Um, yeah, I can't believe it's almost July. It's just bonkers. So, no excuses really, but 106 changes that I need to push up. Those will be pushed up soon enough, and we'll start running this on stream as like a little app that lives in the system tray here. And as we're talking through and sort of setting up the stream for the week, what we'll do is we'll sort of like add to-do items to that. And then it'll be very easy to in theory, it would be very easy to sort of show the progress that we made throughout the stream for somebody that's stopping by in the middle. You use state to provide connection to the database. That makes sense. In what way might be my first question. So there's what we've been looking at specifically with this integration is that I want the state to persist when the app restarts. So if I restart my computer, I still want that state to stay there, and I'm fine. It doesn't need to be backed up or saved in a database anywhere. So we pulled in the store plugin. What that's doing is persisting the state to basically like a bin file that it's reading a file state in a file that I'm presuming lives adjacent to whatever executable you have. Yeah, so that's a different type of state, right? So the idea there is that you make a connection and you hold a connection open from Rust to your database, and that makes it, I presume the intent is to make it faster for the communication from the web view to Rust to the database, rather than having to like reopen that connection every time, or at least persist it long enough where you can get a couple of requests in there. That is different than state that's more ephemeral, that's held within the web view, which is also different than state that you save in a SQLite database or locally or whatever. Exactly, not to reopen every time. Yeah, that makes sense. And I imagine in some ways a fair number of the libraries are already doing that. The main difference here is that the libraries that are doing that are likely expecting to be running in a browser context. So they're doing it in the context of the browser rather than what you're doing is in the context of this of the Rust or the back end of Tauri. And I guess that is actually a decent segue to looking at the plugins. Are you using the SQL plugin? Excuse me. I haven't. We haven't actually pulled this in yet. I'm tempted to pull it in. Maybe not in this app, but potentially in future apps because I'm particularly interested in SQLite. It's neat as a local storage thing because pretty much anything that you're doing local, I would say it's for a vast majority of apps, you're unlikely as a single user, maybe even highly unlikely as a single user to expand out of the use case of where SQLite can't meet your needs. Oh, you're using RescueLite. You didn't like this plugin? There's a couple. I don't know if they're official ones. I think there's a couple other SQL plugins too. Was it a SQLX thing? Because there's SQLX, there's Diesel, there's one or two other ones, but I presume based off of the name, RescueLite is a SQLite specific database crate. What's nice about the plugins is you can kind of just do this and then use it. But also, I'm not keen on doing that in the front end. I guess for most things that I'm building, I'm doing more and more where the things that I care about to write in Tauri end up being more app based. So I would be more okay with this. But I still feel like in a lot of cases, I also want it to run in the web. Because I'm doing a lot of the work already. It's not too much to add a little abstraction to not write this directly in your web view. Here's Diesel 2 for a second project. Okay. Yeah, there's if we take a quick look at a little bit of build stuff. Where's the command? Okay, load. So it does a couple of high level commands. Actually, a little bit more code than I was expecting. Add migrations. Yeah, I guess migrations are kind of a thing because if you're handling, I guess in many ways, I'm still, what's the word I'm looking for? My default expectation when I hear database is separate from your app and it's acts more like a service. So that when you're doing migrations and changing the schema and all of that, it's sort of like a separate process. But when you're, especially like SQLite, I would say you're more likely to have to deal with that locally and bake it all together. Migrations are better handled in Diesel. I think that would be definitely something that I would be that I really want to dig into more, because more just and that might actually end up being a stream topic. Just digging into all these different. Okay, let's set the stage. The I've always had an interest in what I think is now dubbed local first apps. I mean, I started one with that concept back in like 2010. The things that I wanted to do, just the tech was not there. It's gotten a lot better, and I've gotten the project further over the years, rewritten it a few times and newer things, which have improved the situation. Also, bigger compute helps a lot for what I was trying to do. But still, that local first app is difficult. There's a lot involved, and I think it's just starting to like really see that type of attention. Possibly because data ownership used to be more of a default, but now it's becoming the default to save state in a server somewhere, and then big data AI sell it to ad company is a lot of the app revenue model at this point. I feel like, and I feel that probably has at least some part in pushing the idea of local first apps forward. So in that way only, I respect that contribution. But there's a bunch of let's see if I can local first. Sure, we'll go with that. This is what I was thinking of. I'm actually in this Discord. I don't particularly participate, mostly out of just like time issues, but they do a bunch of like talks. And they bring people in, and they've got a handful of links, which I appreciate. Actual, I've been following along in that space for a while, and that I think really started to cement the idea of like local first in my mind. But there is like Replicache, and I think they're working on a new iteration of something too. Vulkan has been one that I've been interested in. The all the stuff that Ink and Switch do. The Ink and Switch, I hesitate to call it a manifesto, but because that I feel like that is connotations that come with it. But Ink and Switch did a big post that really like laid out all the pieces that like I had kind of had all of that in the back of my mind, but they laid it out really well and sort of put a name to the face, as it were. They've auto merge and YJS are sort of like two pieces of the puzzle in that like specific space. But then you start getting into the storing data part of it, which one of the reasons I was interested in Vulkan was it sort of handles both sides. We did a tiny base on stream. We played around with that in a Tauri app. And then Electric SQL seems like it's coming along too. I've played with a bunch of these other ones, but we haven't done too much as far as talking about it in that space of story. All that being said, doing local first is not easy. These libraries are making it easier, but it's still not easy. And then, arguably, is anything really easy? But it's not to the point where you could reasonably choose it as like a quick default. Like it's going to be an active choice to do a local first app. I think is maybe the best way to qualify it. Have you heard of this the local first community? Job? I would be curious. So I think in that space, I think I would like to go through and explore some of those um, in the context of Tauri, because I think how you would build an in Tauri sort of changes the expectation a little bit. Because if you're talking browser server, having that ability to sync server in through a server is helpful. But you can do peer-to-peer syncing, and syncing is the really complicated bit as it is. So even if you have the peer-to-peer syncing potentially through an external server, that how you architect it in a Tauri app can be different, because you sort of have like this like local backend almost, and you could have that local backend talk to other local backends to do the peer-to-peer bit. Whereas I think most of those libraries expect to be running purely in a context or in the context of a browser, and are using like local storage within the browser and browser only APIs, and then talking to an external service. So I think that exploring that within Tauri specifically would be very interesting, and something I would be interested in doing. There's a bunch of things that like a short list of streams that I want to do still that I need to go back to and make sure we queue those all up. But I have a feeling the state thing will happen in a bigger way, or more specific way. Intentful maybe is the best word. Interesting. All the accent marks. Is it Datka? Datka? Good. Hello. Hello. This is German. Hello. Thanks for stopping by. So speaking of stopping by, I didn't drop a link. I promised that I would drop links in the Tauri Discord, and I completely forgot. One moment, please. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through, and we made a good amount of progress using the store plugin. Okay, there we go. Got that check mark off, I guess. You know what made me struggle just yesterday? It's the mock function. It didn't want to work with feed test. What mock function? That's actually, we're all about distractions today, apparently. The testing in Tauri, I really want to, I don't know if that'll end up being a stream thing, but I personally want to dig into it, and in the context of work, it's not my main intention, but I do have some attention being thrown in that direction. We'll see where that goes, but testing space is something I definitely really want to dig into. Okay, so oh boy, reload. We use the store plugin, and getting this in working within the context of React is specifically like the whole expectation of async. It's kind of a pain. And the APIs we were working with aren't quite there. The one to intercept invoke, it just doesn't work. You gave up. Are you imagining that this is a vtest mock issue, or is this something within the? There's like a mock. Where is it now? Develop tests mock here. So like this is what you're doing, right? JS DOM doesn't come with a web crypto implementation. Interesting. Mock IPC. Ah, okay. I haven't actually used the mocks library yet. I'm not a personally a huge fan of mocks, if I'm being completely honest. The yeah, really not a huge fan of mocks. Most of the testing that we end up doing uh, through with clients through my work is more in the integration end to end type thing, where like writing this can be helpful, but you can also write this test in a way that isn't expecting to eventually invoke. You can write the test and write the function that generates like the payload, and then your unit test can check that that payload is correct, and then you can have some assumption that the invoke firing off that payload is eventually going to hit the rust and in the way that you're expecting it to. So having some smaller unit tests for specific like business cases or whatnot to build up a payload, I think can be helpful. But as soon as you start doing like adding that like one extra layer there, where you're also including and using this mock IPC, like it ends up effectively being the same thing in my mind, where you're kind of just checking that the payload makes sense. So why even like bring in and deal with having this mock IPC, or like a mock or a mock function in general, because then you're configuring this mock for like every test, which is, and you could do abstractions, and in some ways this mock IPC is an abstraction, but like I'm not a fan of that abstraction. I like to test all the small unit pieces, the really business specific functions, and then test the glue code. And I think that's where all the integration comes in, because the issues happen when you click a thing and it invokes and does a thing in the backend in Rust, fires off a request. That request comes back, and then it emits an event, and then you got to handle it on the front end. If I write an integration test that checks filling out or a form or doing a thing on the front end, and then I get back the thing I'm expecting, I've checked all that glue code. And that tends to be where errors end up showing up in from what I've seen. Now, getting things in a place where you can actually do that integration test in CI is a whole, like you said, a whole future stream. But I guess a little bit of a plug on the one of the things that I do in the context of the paid time. We've been working through a thing that we've dubbed simulacrum. Simulation is sort of the overarching theme. We're changing this, how we're approaching this slightly, because we've seen that the value of having specific simulators is, and simulators that can be run separately is important, because there's sort of there's an onboarding process. Getting yourself into a place where you can really make great use of simulation, especially when you start having to work with custom APIs and like custom simulators. There's a little bit of work involved. But what's nice about simulation is that, and one of the reasons that I think it would make an interesting future stream is the way we approach simulation is that we are faking things at the HTTP layer. So we're standing up like a mock server, ideally with generated but more dynamic generated data. And that's the thing that's being faked or returning data that we have some expectation of that isn't necessarily reliant on an actual service because we're running it locally. So like one of the examples, we were working with a GitHub API a lot. So we wrote a GitHub API simulator. So the idea is that you run this service or the server, it's just like a Node Express app adjacent to whatever test you're running, and then you're just hitting that local host instead of going out to the actual GitHub. And what's nice is that this ends up being something that collectively we can put effort into. So we've used this with multiple clients now. I'm probably going to pull it into a project or one or two projects of my own. But then you can also use it for when you're running locally. So when we run a front end or a service locally, we can click around and use the same simulated service, just as we would then use it in the tests. So you sort of end up pulling whereas a mock tends to be very coupled to a specific test or test suite. A simulator is more generic with more dynamic data where you can use it locally, you can use it in tests, and then you could use it in potentially multiple projects. All that being said, simulation at the HTTP layer is helpful and a good abstraction for web apps. But Tauri isn't exactly a web app. So I think that would be something that I would really want to dig into, because mocking at the IPC layer means that you're basically just testing the stuff within the browser or within the web view. But how do you like test the Rust part of it? That becomes involved. And in some ways, you have to, like, you end up having to do a Rust build in your CI, which isn't going to be fast. And you want your tests run fast. I mean, I don't think anybody inherently thinks end-to-end tests and integration tests are bad or don't provide value. It's just that with the tooling that is generally out there and people are aware of, the amount of effort to get to the point where it becomes valuable and outweighs the cons, it's a really hard equation to hit right. So, long story short, yes, mocks. Future stream. Okay, so where were we? We were talking state. And I like it. I'm talking about testing and talking about state. They sort of go hand in hand, because like once we get the state thing set up, now how the heck do you test it? So you see one that made an Axum server to duplicate the command so you can test the front end of the browser. That is possibly in the vein of kind of what I'm thinking. But also, like, that's not going to cover all the APIs, which is unfortunate. And like, you can use, like, the docs end up talking about WebDriver. We got a WebDriver set up. I mean, it says they're all broken, but I mean, we've gotten some of it working again recently. And for the most part, it's just like standing up a sole separate service, which handles some of that communication very much in the same way that the abstraction of simulators is. But if we're firing off all these commands, and I guess Axum server to duplicate commands probably works better in V2, because you're less likely to end up using post message. It's a little bit more HTTP is probably the best way to say it. or at least like spec of HTTP. So I mean, like, you do that and you get an Axum server, and now you're basically testing the front end. You're still not to the, like, that's a lot of work, and you're still not to the point where you can really test the glue code all the way through. So in some ways, like, if you can run the app headless, the thing that I think would be valuable would be the external communication. So if you think of the app as a wholesale thing, um, I can write unit tests for the web view. I can write unit tests for the Rust side of things. But I want to test the integration of all those unit tests together. Local state ends up being a little bit more complicated because if you're pulling in like this, we were running into this, and we'll get to it in a second here. This store that we're using maintains state, and it brings back that state when you like reload the app. So I ended up just putting in this in here to like reset the state. If I got into a bad state, I could reset it that way and then basically start from fresh. How do you do that in tests? So if you ran the app and you had the web view and the Rust side of things all operating in the space of like normal Tauri app, and you only simulated the external pieces, call out to an external database, call out to do like peer-to-peer sync or something externally. That is doable, but you still have all that internal stuff. And how do you reset the state or test that in a way that you can like replicate in CI? So there's like the issue of like running it headless. There's the if it is running headless, all those pieces still need to work and fit together in the same way. It's not easy. It's not easy. So long story short, I can understand why somebody settled on the Axum server thing, because if they have a specific use case or set of use cases, particularly around the commands, I can see that being potentially useful. And that is kind of the idea too of the I closed it. But with simulation, we want to make it really easy to stand up endpoints and just fire off things to them, and then be able to confirm that said thing fired off as expected, which usually means returning enough data that you could get effectively a full integration test, out and then back in, and then check that the return in your app that is rendered or however you're using it is the same as like the payload that or matches up with your expectations of what you sent out with that payload. So there's definitely a lot to talk about. Some of it is potentially going to be hard to do on stream, but I'm definitely interested in that space, and like writing plugins, because I think plugins are going to come into being able to make the testing situation, like to improve the testing situation. I think we're going to need more plugins. I guess kind of a bit of a plug for the folks at Crab Nebula. They've got the DevTools, which does something very much the same. And I do want to explore this on stream at some point too. I was talking with the folks that worked on this to see if we could talk about it on stream. But then everybody got busy. So where am I looking? There is a plugin, and it's basically just like running as part of the app, like it's running with all that context in the app. This is less, and this works because it's more of a like observation tool. You're running it locally, and you can use this as a way to like look at and observe that communication. I don't think it's there, and I don't think the intent is that it will be there where this is something you could use in the context of like running your tests in CI. So yeah, so I guess some ways disclosure, the folks at Crab Nebula, many of them are also on the core Tauri team, of which I am as well. I guess we're not calling it core anymore. I'm still stuck in my old ways, I guess. But we've deemed them official partners of Tauri because so much of the time spent on Tauri comes from effectively Crab Nebula paying people to work on Tauri specifically. So there was basically no reservations to calling them official partners of Tauri. They've got a few things in here too where I would like to explore as well. Magic Framework. I haven't actually looked at that one. I am curious. But Drake RS seems pretty nifty because playing around with multi-windows is always something I've been interested in, and through the event loop and Tau and the windows, you can use drag and monitor like drag events, in which case you can like drag out pieces of your UI and pull them out into separate windows. Would be a sort of a use case that feels very interesting. So, anyways, state what we came here for. The So the thing that we were running into last time was that when we set up the store, everything, pretty much all of these APIs are going to be async because you're firing off an invoke. Inherently, that's like in some ways that's basically just an HTTP request, which means we need to figure out how to fit this into the context of like the thing we're working with. I was kind of avoiding like diving into, if you're familiar with React, they've added pieces to make it easier to basically like pass around promises or use promises as a way to determine when components render. That is, I think, effectively the suspense API. But how to use it is always, it's been changing enough that I just haven't wanted to mess around with it, especially for smaller apps. So we had made a couple of smaller hooks, and then we were using this use async list, which comes from the React Spectrum, which is the component library that we were using to set up our app. So this has got I guess it's in React stately, use async list, which allows us to deal with the fact that store calls are async. And we had a little bit of, if the store is not actually returning that list, then deal with it. But we were running into issues with it actually like persisting in that way that we were expecting to. So let's see if we can work through dealing with that and get the last bit of this state handled. So we've got, and obviously a little CSS we're going to need to. I thought we figured out how to turn that off. So if we added an item, it shows up as like a to-do list. So the idea is that this will show up down here eventually, right? And down in the like system tray, and we can just pop it up. Now, if we refresh this, it should keep coming back. And we refresh, it should keep coming back, right? Now we're going to let's do TTTT. So it's not persisting it when we do the set. There's something in there that seems to be going on. I thought we had it. We got pretty close. But the to-do items that we're receiving here seems to be stale. So like we're having issues with, in some ways, like both APIs. So this okay, I really need to is this window draggable? I want to be able to drag it out of the way. Oh. Resizable. Okay. And let's do the you need to give a random ID to the input. That's so hacky. I thought we had it figured out. Well, I don't even remember what I was doing. Here, well, okay. One thing at a time. Let's see, Spectrum tabs. So tab list. Is that the tab list up here? Spectrum tabs. That's the actual tab. Okay, so I think if I do, was it? I can never remember what this is. Data Tauri drag region. I don't think that's right. Oh no. It's something like this, right? Nope. Okay, I gotta look it up. I feel like I remember enough to like try to YOLO it, and then I realized that I don't remember it well enough. Drag region. I don't care about the events. Data drag. All right, what is the if you all know offhand? Otherwise, I'm just gonna look it up elsewhere. Okay, I'm gonna try to resize you out of the way for the moment. Okay. Configuration, state management, distribute. I'm not even sure where it would be. Okay. Okay. We are going to go back to Tauri.app. Let us search here. Drag region. I feel like that did not. You can't drag the window when it's on focus. That's fine. Actually, that might just have the here. Data Tauri drag region. Elements with data Tauri drag region can't be dragged. Data Tauri drag region. Okay. It is there. And I think I got it right. But is it not passing it through? because I need to be able to. I don't know if I'm going to always need to be able to drag this, but I need to drag it right now. Data focus, scope start. Oh, it's this piece. It's got to be in here somewhere, right? Unless it's just not passing it through, which could very well be. Okay. We might have to take a look-see here. You can move over a little bit. This is the downside of not having access to like the HTML directly. Drag and drop. No, that I care about the tab menu. What are the tabs? Props. Positioning. Position is hidden advanced. Okay, so we can do a class name and an inline style. How do I set like data? Data, was it data tag? Is that what it's called? Class name, date picker. I don't know how much it's gonna like complain if I wrap this in a thing. So like if I go like this, is it gonna not like that? Okay, so this piece here, that whole thing should be draggable. Okay, maybe we go up one level. Nope, 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 nope. Right there. Yeah, see, this is the other thing. Like getting, oh, I get, okay, okay. Do I need to enable drag? No, doesn't. It's not giving me any warnings. Failed to reload. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Okay. We put it somewhere else. Um, so layout, we don't really have a header, and I kind of need to deal with this too. So like I'm calling the height of the view as 100 VH, which is probably fine. I don't know if I can set this here. We can try though. Let's give that a refresh. Let's make sure. I don't know if there's. I don't remember if I need permissions for this now. I can't seem to drag anything though. Oh, that's annoying. All right, we are going to going to take that off for the moment because it's not working. I'm going to, since we've deviated anyways from like how this and when this is shown, let's just turn on decorations. That'll allow me to drag it. And back to your mention of, there we go. Okay. Good. Text field, label, name. And you said just a random ID. Like, I'm guessing it's because whatever thing you're putting in there is trying to autocomplete it. And the ID, I'm presuming, is enough to like break that expectation of autocomplete. So like it's sort of a hacky workaround, I think. I assumed autocomplete hidden would work. It doesn't appear to be working. Hey Nicola, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, so and like this is the same issue. If I put an ID here, I guess it does. Sure, let's do enter item. I don't know if this is actually gonna make a difference or not. But like we're using a component, so we gotta actually it has to pass the prop. Yeah, autocomplete hidden clearly is not working. See, oh, like why are you saving data? I don't know. We will come back to that though. I want to get this state thing working. So we do this, reload. Oh, that's the other thing. My container here is for the to-do items. I think that's 100, which is why I always have to scroll. Where does it show up? Hooks, layouts. Okay, so where do I have that? List view? Ah, here, height, 90 VH. So if I take off the height, what's that look like? Okay, I'm okay with that for right now. We still need to deal with the colors and everything. It's not a big deal. Value input math.random. That might work. Unless you happen to randomly get the same value on one of the reloads. I kind of hate that that would potentially work. I want to figure out a better way to actually deal with it, but let's deal with this first. Okay, so it's definitely only saving the last one, which is I think what we determined right at the end of the stream last week. And okay, close. We care about this, yes. So we have a callback, use callback to handle the submit. We are getting a to do. And when we do the handle submit, we are preventing the default functionality. We're grabbing the value. And if that does indeed have a value, then we do stuff, of one of which is doing an await set store. But for some reason, this set store seems to work, but only for this. So this to do items appears to be coming in as undefined, or is otherwise empty, or in a previous from a previous state. So let's do a refresh. and we do an add. So if we look at the items here, there's no items. It should have items. So for some reason, I think it's possible we're hitting this still potentially. So this can return to-do list or null. So if tabs from store is null, then we do want this. So that's what we're running into. I think on first render, it's null. On second render, it's this, but we have nothing actually that is re-triggering when the store dot get actually ends up re-rendering this component. I think ends up being what the issue is. So here, to do items, empty. Items, empty. There's clearly items there. Now we got a bigger error. What? What did I do? Oh, okay. I guess I didn't save. Check the render method of tabs. Oh, yep. We shall come back to that in a sec. So if we add something here, it is calling the to-do.append. So we're basically, this is right. So the internal state within to do is correct. List ID isn't changing. We're pulling the store from the context. So like we almost need to listen to the store to see when. Can we make sure that store is not null? This is definitely falling into that like. So this will this functional like a re-render. It's probably not the best word, but this will recalculate when store changes. So what if store goes from null to having an extra value? It should work. I guess we're pulling. Yeah, this API just doesn't work the best for what we need to do with Tauri. Because use async list will take a load function, which we've given it, and then we can maybe give it a key, initial selected keys, initial sort, initial filter, and a sort. And so like this is really nice. Like it looks, I mean, I can, there's some CSS or like styling that I still kind of need to deal with, but the functionality that it comes with is really nice. And they've put a lot of thought into this, but you end up having to like architect, like a component library ends up like in some ways forcing you to architect it in a way that it's expecting you to, which in some ways also lends itself to you have to use only that component library and then potentially extend it. Because if you try to use two component libraries or smaller component libraries that have, like they're just starting out or they only have one or two components, now you're having to like, not mutate the data, but like it's like Play-Doh. you take it out of one thing, you need to squish it into a different shape to fit it into the other thing. That experience can be frustrating. So, I mean, in this way, what we're doing is we're doing a context here, and then we are rendering a thing. I could very well dump this into like a second hook or something. But I really just need this. Like this load could potentially fire more than once, which is kind of the expectation, I think, with what they have in, where is it, the reload? Reload and like load more is the way to do that. But now after you like append something, so you've loaded the list. You've loaded the list. You could potentially reload the list and get updated values. But as soon as you call append, you're just changing local state. So now, how do you? I don't think this has any other. Like I almost want append to be able to fire off a, or in some ways, or somehow encapsulate the work that I need to do to update external state too. I don't want to just update my internal state or this like component state. Asynchronous loading. So like it feels like they've only solved with, at least with this library, it feels like they've only solved the first half of it, the get. But the put still seems kind of painful. So I guess, all right, we're doing an initial load. It seems like we are always coming in with this. We are expecting context of which that could be null. Can we change how we do the context a little bit? We have this use Tauri. It is firing off a use effect, and then it's got tray, notifications, and store, all of which could potentially, well, tray and store could be null. But there's really nothing we can do about that because we need to do async work anyways. So there's going to be kind of this either direct or indirect side effect that needs to happen to initialize store. So how do we get this to only render when store is defined? I guess that's kind of the ticket. In which case, do we deal with it at one level up? Where's my view app? Okay, that's actually like I think one of the last things we tried. So if store is null, or if store is not defined, then do null, otherwise do home. So home should only be rendering. That should only be rendering after we have store. So if we do this, because this is still thinking that it can come in. All right, well we're gonna do this. I'm not a huge fan of this, but let's do this for the moment. So this should give us store, and then this is only going to end up rendering. So tab list, where's tab list? So store.get, that's going to then also return. Then we got, I guess, the other issue, because this could be null. So what we're going to say is, there's null in two ways. There's the store hasn't been instantiated, which I guess is actually what we were solving for before. Let's undo that quick. So that should ensure that store is not null here. So store should always be defined, which is what we were trying to do here. So store is always going to be defined because by the time we render home, it will be defined. But when we get, this could also be a null. And I guess if we just, let's just say throw new error. And we'll say if tabs from store, just throw an error. Let's see what that ends up giving us here. So if we do a refresh, we're not actually getting an error. And if we do an add, we still haven't actually gotten an error. So oh, wait. We got a couple of things going on here. This is loading the tabs. So we're giving it a tab ID. I forgot about this. So in to-do list, we also have the store. We also have the same thing. We shouldn't be rendering it until then. And here, so then this, if we do something in the same vein, so if we make a new tab, this isn't actually going to be filled in yet. So I guess if that's not defined, let's just set it. So if we get a new tab that hasn't actually been defined yet, then we do something like this. So if it hasn't been defined yet, then, oh, here, wait. We want to return no items, which makes sense. But we also want to make sure that that's set. And that's going to be the key and our value. So it should be items is empty. And we can do, let's say, const no items equals this. Apparently I got rid of my block. All right, no items. So no items, return no items. There we go. So we have store can potentially be null, but then each of the items within the store can also be null. Now what we've got here is when we try to load a tab, if it hasn't actually, if we're getting null for the data in that tab, then we want to return an empty array. But also we weren't actually setting up that store. So that I think what was happening here is we were coming back as like, we were getting to do, and I think there was like some weird thing going on with this set. Like we were like resetting it every time. So this should make sure that at least it's an empty array. So we get an item text. We are logging out right now the to do. We are logging out the let's try to get the current data. Current. This resets the form. I could put that in there actually. Reset the form. Prevent form from default server and send and page refresh. So we're only going to do some work if there's anything in that item. Others it's going to no op. We are, this is just helpers at the moment. So let's log out the to do. So basically local state, current store state. And then we are using that local state, its items and the new item. And we are creating a local variable that should have what both of these should be set as. So then we're setting the store and then we're appending. Now, if we refresh, to do item, I think that looks good. All right, let's do a refresh. Got one item. I'm going to reset our state just to be certain that we know what's happening here. So we'll do a reset. This should give us a tab with no data. So we got a tab, no data. Now, let's go through this. It has loaded. There's no data there. So this will return null. So as it's returning null, we are going to be setting an empty array of items, firing that back off to the store, and then returning that same thing, which will then initialize the to-do. So when we enter in something here, we are logging out here, to-do and current. So current, that makes sense. It has no items. And that also matches. So those make sense. Cannot read properties of null, reading reset. Why is that suddenly not working? mean, I guess I can put it there. I don't know if I like that there, but okay. Add an item, add. Interesting. So current to do makes sense. Here we're logging out line 51 to do and store items. I'm gonna wrap this actually in a shorthand property object. We're relogging out to do and then the new store item. Okay. So we've given it an ID and content. And here are, we still haven't appended yet, so that's going to be valid. Now if we do one more, our items is still empty. To do items is coming in from the closure. So like this whole thing actually needs to recalculate every time to do changes. Ooh. I guess. Basically, we're getting a stale to do. So now, refresh. There we go. That is. So this was always empty because this whole thing would only recalculate if store changed rather than off of to do. So we were getting the to do from the closure. So what if we actually do handle submit? Can we give it a to do? We're only using the items. So if we say to do.items, and then we're defining, all right, let's look at the docs real quick. React dev use callback. Hooks, there we go. Ha, I was looking in the wrong place. Function dependencies. The function ends up being, in our case, it's going to have an event. Event. There we go. So now this should have previous items. So now we can take this dependency off and we're going to pass in the previous items every time. Then we can get rid of this and get rid of this and this. There. So now I don't have to recalculate this every time we pass in, or every time to do updates. There we go. So now, and this is why I wish this use async list would let us encapsulate all of this, because I'm gonna have to write like a handle submit and then a handle delete for like every one of these cases, which is not ideal. I would prefer just to call like to-do.append. That would make things much easier. Like if I could encapsulate this into some sort of like events, this saving of the state, then my call down here would be a function that just does this. That feels like it would be the most convenient, I guess, is probably the bit here. Okay, so handle delete. This isn't going to be an event. We're going to put a button. I guess we don't want to delete, do we? We're just going to check them as we go. So if I refresh, it doesn't say the, okay, so we actually, we're not going to delete them at the moment. I guess if I, what's their list API look like? Spectrum list view. We can reorder. We can disable quiet overflow. Because I guess there's like there's probably the two cases. There's the selection, which would be like checking it off. Then there's the delete. I don't want this thing anymore. So I guess we still do need the delete. So this has got drag and drop here. You can drag and drop back and forth. And you can also drag and drop within the list. Reordering is going to be nice. If we, is there a, I think all of their drag and drop is built with the expectation that it, see, like this is wired up to where you can't drag it anywhere else than here. So between lists, reorderable. So if I want to just like drag it off, like theoretically, if I just dragged it off, it would be kind of cool to delete it. I mean, I could almost do like a drag between lists, and then another list is effectively like a trash can. That might be the way to go. I think I would like that interaction the best. So we're not gonna deal with that right now. We then just need to persist the check state. So do we have an on event? So I guess when we first add an item and it's not gonna be checked. So we're doing store items, to do item, and then we're gonna have a checked property. Checked false. So then what we can do is, I actually just deleted the, here, can I copy, or can I undo? I was thinking I wouldn't need the, there, okay. So checked false. And we've got an on action here. So if we look at our log, I check boxes. When I click, I get the ID, but I don't get an event for checking. So, is there something that I can listen to know when it's checked? Because it, like, internally within the list, it's holding that state. Otherwise, this wouldn't be updating. So it's aware of this state. Disallow empty selection. Okay. I don't have to. We can have everything unselected. That's fine. Highlight selection. Row actions. So row actions. There's an on action. On action key. Opening item. So when you select it, doesn't do anything. So we might need to change our settings slightly, because if I select, oh, okay, all right. If I'm clicking like on the edge and it's not actually checking it, I'm getting the event right now. So the list view on action is happening right there. There's a form on submit item. Okay, so there's an events when a user performs an action on an item. And it depends on the selection style prop. So I don't really care about this selection. So the selection style, where is that? Okay, so it's checkbox or highlight. Doesn't actually say. Doesn't say what the default is. What was it? Checkbox. So give that a refresh. Now if I check a box, if I click, it's just giving it to me. If I check it, nothing. Selection mode? That is weird. I feel like that's backwards. Selected keys, default selected keys. All selections should be displayed. So how do I get the event? I feel like this is kind of odd. It works backwards from what I would expect it to, but also like it says it's related to other props. Density is quiet, overflow mode. Empty state render, drag and drop hooks. I check. It includes a checkbox in each row for selection. When the selection style prop is set to highlight, checkboxes are hidden. In the default checkbox selection style, clicking, tapping, or pressing the space or enter key toggles selection for the focused row. Highlight is like a replace. And row actions. So Pokemon list is, so these both look like lists of which we're getting keys. So if you click here, it says opening. If I check the box, we don't. That feels oddly backwards. um, we might be able to bake it into this though. So item is rendering checkbox in the end, of which it is coming from item here. Where is item? List menu. Well, that's not going to help me out, is it? React spectrum item. Layout provider flex. Is that just like a generic wrapper? Must be. So I guess then if I look at the checkbox of which I'm on, if we say props, events. So I guess on change. So if I go here and I say item on change, is selected. So if I do something like that, it's not liking that. Which kind of sucks. Given that it seems to be rendering that. So refresh. And if I... Weird. So it's giving the key. When the user performs an action on the item, the exact user event depends on the collection's selection style and the interaction modality. So selection style is going to be checkbox, highlight, or undefined. So if I do highlight, it's not going to give me the checkboxes anymore, which I don't want. So I definitely want that. And then on action is basically just not giving me enough information. So let's look at the list view again, I guess. List view. List view. And if you look at the props, positioning, sizing, spacing, layout, and events. when the selection changes. Maybe we could try that. I don't think that's what I want. Well, let's take a look. So I click here, nothing. Current key. Okay. So on selection change. So if I, okay, weird. Let's do this. And we'll do action. Refresh. So now if I click here, that's an action. I click closer in. None of that's actually doing the box, but if I click on the text, nope, still nothing. These are all actions. If I click the box, I'm getting an event. When I unclick it, I'm also getting an event. Okay. So let's see. And the difference between these, there is we have in entries. I see. So if you do something like this, your selection is increasing, in which that's the reason that there's entries. So now if you do this, oh, okay. Oh, that's kind of awkward. So I have to basically check if there's entries or not. Because some of these have, it's just like straight away the anchor tag. But some of these are like actual entries. Anchor key. So basically, like if there's an anchor key, wait, size 0, size 1, is size 0 always going to be when you're unselecting? I guess not, because you're actually like, in this case, you're going down. So 4, ugh, gosh. Do we have, is TODO holding this state somewhere? Props, list. Because trying to react off of, I mean, I can react off of that event, but pulling out the data from that event is kind of painful. So if it's, well, oh, where am I? Oh, I meant to go here. I think potentially what's happening is this use async list is updating. So if we would look at this, actually it ends up being kind of less data, but it's like listing out these items. So if we've got an items. Is there anything that, okay, selected keys, the keys of the currently selected items. So selected might be a little bit of questionable. We'll say that. On selection change, on action isn't helpful. Let's get rid of that. Let's look at to do. Give that a refresh. So now if I click here, our to do, we have items. Those items don't have any, they've got content and ID, so there's no selection state attributed with them. And selected keys. So no keys are selected. Remove. So is selected keys. There's still no selected keys. So does this hold the items? Update, sort. I can call selected keys. I was expecting selected keys to have the information that we needed. Let's say keys and to do dot selected. It's a set, and that set is not updating. So when I check a box, the list doesn't actually. So the list view is the thing that's, oh my gosh. The list view is the thing that's holding the state. It's got to be. In which case, I feel like we were cruising, setting things up, and as soon as we got to this list view, getting these APIs to cooperate has been surprisingly more involved. Single selection, controlled selection. So selected keys. So that's saying do selected keys as a set. So selected keys is an input. It's not a, I was expecting that to be a, it's it looks like selected keys within here is probably the same where, yes, the items in the list. I mean, this feels like it should be giving me what I would expect. That's different than the selection keys in the other thing too. I guess here, if I unselect everything and I do this, like my set is always 0. So despite having items, content ID. Well, so text, header, footer, divider, content. Well, view. I think like it seems like it's basically a checkbox, right? So I would expect that the checkbox props would work, but it's a list view of which. Okay, so it says usage item, but there's no. Item, complex items. What's this say? Items within a list field allow for additional content. Okay, so like we could do actions. So the item is more than just a checkbox. Drag icon, checkbox, context area. So there, we can do an add additional items, and it gets that chevron, which would indicate it has internal content, action. So I guess like the three dot menu is something we can do for delete or edit, I guess. Um, we don't actually get any. Weird. Yeah, we don't get any like updated we don't get any events or anything for when the state updates. So it seems like that state is included in it's included in the list view. It doesn't seem like it's actually tied to that hook. They use list data hook, or in our case, they use async list. In which case, I think the only events we have access to then are these: on load more, on selection change, and on action. When a user performs an action on an item. So there's a default and there's a selected. We can control the selected keys. Which is a little bit annoying. I'm guessing it presumes that it's controlled if you're giving it selected keys, because yeah, like you're specifying the ones that actually need to be selected. On selection change. So it's a set is what it looks like. So on selection change, if we unselect everything, give it a refresh. So if I check this, Okay. So the on selection change is always going to that's a set. That set is always going to have a list of checked items. Got it. I think that was the bit that I was missing, was that I didn't realize that that was an set. So we could, those are going to be the IDs. So if we say, it's kind of unfortunate, but anytime it changes, we don't know like what's changed. There's no indication. It's just the updated set. There's no indication on that specific change. So what we would have to do would be, so every time this changes, we end up basically having an handle selection change. Use callback store, I think is fine. There's no, there's none of, well, there's no previous items. We'll end up giving it a handle selection change. And what it's giving us back is a set. So we can do this. And this will be, we'll call it current set, I guess. There's no events, so we don't need to worry about any of this. And we're going to say if false, just to skip this whole section for the moment. Because what we end up basically needing to do is calling the existing set and then resetting all the values for every one of them. Here, we're going to get rid of this. Let's just log it out so we're at a baseline at least. Refresh. Check. Gives me a current set. Okay. So current set dot. Can you help me out at all? Nope. Can I say that it's a set? Requires an argument. So I guess it's an anchor key and a current key. Anchor key string and current key string. So now we can loop over and so we can get the entries. Effectively what we end up doing then is I guess in reality we just need the keys. So this is going to be an array of selected keys. Selected. So selected should be iterable iterator. Okay, so it's an iterator. So yeah, I guess that'll be fine. Because I think we're gonna do then something like if selected dot includes like our value. It doesn't like that. keys. I guess we can do has. Has would work. Okay. So every time we make a change in handle submit, we are setting the complete store value. Which kind of is annoying. We could potentially call back out to it. I don't think that's going to be entirely helpful though. I think what we do is we just take all of the to-do items and I guess we basically can say something like this. Current items, just recalculate that based off the store. Then we end up doing the same. We'll say change, and to-do items. Argument of type selection is not a assignable to parameter of type set. Okay. So this actually, we might be able to just change this to say selection. What kind of selection is it? Selection, all, set and key. And what's key? And it does export it. Okay, so we can do this, current set is a selection of which it needs to come from here. And we'll put it, come on, there we go. We will put it, oh my gosh, I did it again. I keep pressing that, the shortcut key for my Windows, or for my Mac, not my Windows box. Let's try it again. This key, there we go. So it is, I'm attributing it to the list view, so I'm putting it right underneath the list view. So current set. So this is going to go away. It's going to end up being as. What we're going to do is we have current items. So that's going to be from the to-do.items. We know the values for all of those. That's an ID. It conforms to this. And now I guess we got a checked and a Boolean. So if we got nothing in there, it's going to be empty. Items, and we are setting on handle submit, we are setting checked false. So that is fine now. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to set all of the items. And we're going to say const updated store items equals dot map. And for every item, what we're going to do is we're going to change that checked based on const checked equals, it's a Boolean. So what we can say is if current set dot has item.id, that's going to be true or false. So if it has it, it knows it's checked. So okay, well, property has does not exist on type selection. Okay, current set dot. So what the heck is that? What is a selection? It's a set. Okay, so selection is either all or oh. Okay, well, so we're gonna say if current set equals all, or if it has an item. Ugh. Okay. It has an any type. This should be of type to do item. There. So now, anytime we change an item, what we're going to end up doing is remapping over every item from the to-do.items and setting it into the store. So anytime we get a store change, we're just going to like reset it in the store. So if we do that, we check, now we refresh. It's not saving it. Let's try it again, just in case. So every one of those should be a store call. So we should be getting in await. So handle selection change. Do I need an await there? I think. Maybe? I don't remember. Do we need one for this too? Handle submit. Handle submit is an async. It should be. I guess that's the callback internally is handling that, right? I don't remember if callback needs it or not. We can check in a second. Let's try it. It's gonna probably be the easiest way to check. Okay, so that might not be the issue, but let's just double check to make sure that when we're doing handle submit, can we do, or excuse me, use callback? Are we? They're not gonna mention async in here at all, are they? Okay. So we're basically deciding when to call it. All right. Let's do it. Refresh, pull this back, check, refresh. Not stored. So what we can double check here is we are loading the store. So we should be able to see if So after like the third render, we are getting, okay. Okay, so they're checked true, checked false. Um, okay. You know what's lovely here? And this is the what we were talking about with you end up having to match. It doesn't work to use multiple component libraries because you end up having to like munge the data between them to get them to fit. Like it's not a clean puzzle. You have two puzzles and you're trying to mash them together. You might be able to get something that works, but you might end up just modifying some pieces to make it work. So what we're doing is on selection change, we're setting and updating the store. We are getting that, but the list view is not aware of those keys that we have since set. In which case, it is we're kind of in this situation. So here in there, like if we do anything with the selected keys, it feels like you almost always have to. Like, what's the use case for not having the keys be controlled? If you are passing in, and I think we talked about this last time too, like these examples are helpful, but also I'm never going to be hard coding data like this. The likelihood of that is just, it feels very low. So then now I need to like translate this into, well, I need to get the data from somewhere. So the data is coming from like a hook or it's coming from props. And now I'm, well, okay, if that's coming from a hook, then like is how does this fit into it? So like naively, this example is makes sense, but items selecting keys. So I think I have to control it, right? So now I'm doing a handle. So if I do this and I control it, I can't control it as part of my list. So now I've got the state separate from this use async list. And use async list isn't something that I can like pass around. So when I load, I guess when I load, I am okay. Handle selection change. This is strictly just to deal with the fact that I need to update the store. I don't care about the state here is shown internally. That's fine. But I also need to I've got that handle selection change. This is to then take that state and put it into the store. So now when I'm loading, I'm refreshing, I'm pulling it from that store, I need to then take that and set that back into the like existing state. In which case it means that the handle selection change. So like if I did default selected keys, this is going to render to do. I don't know if this is going to be ready yet, but also like to do has items. I'm giving it to do.items and to do. Oh, it might like be putting off rendering based on the loading state. So if I just say like to do dot I guess what would this be? The items in the list. I like when I'm saving the state having the check tied to the actual item. I think that feels good to me. If we do use async list, so we have load. It's a function which has generics T and C. T and C are going to be data. So data ends up returning T. So items ends up being an array of T. So the function get key item and then the key. So it's not even like, I guess. So when I'm doing this and then I'm setting the items or returning that, we've got this, right? But it also includes this. So I can, from that data, potentially derive what those initial keys are going to be. So the default selected keys. So if I say to do dot items dot map, now we can say item. Now what is default selected keys going to take? I'm guessing a list of IDs. Where I feel like I'm always scrolling for this. I can never find it on first look. Default selected keys. It's going to be an iterable of key. So, and I guess an array of keys. So we can say filter item. So if item dot checked, that's going to be Boolean. So in this case, we're only going to get the ones that are marked true. So then item dot ID, that should give us an array of items. And this, I think, is only going to be set after loading state fires. So if we refresh, we should still have that information here. They're all false because it's not saved any of that back. Now refresh. Okay, so there's definitely some true ones. Refresh. Okay, it's definitely not. I think partly because this ends up returning an empty array. So like my default selected keys. Oh gosh. So I think I have to control it because I mean I guess items. I think there's some like if hmm I feel like there's some like weird race condition or something happening within there. So just with based off of my expectations, not saying like it's a bug, but the if we give it a loading state, is it I'm presuming it's not going to render this component until it is loaded, and we give it items. I think that would be reasonable to assume that this is going to be based off the same items as this. So to do .items.filter, we're filtering, and if item is checked, so then it should just give us like a subset of them, and then we're returning the ID. So that should then be an array of IDs. So if I just take this out and say, well, just be, what is that? We'll do STF. That's an easy one to read. So now if I refresh, okay, so STF is in fact selected. So now if I do STF, and I refresh, those are hard coded and those are selected. So those are coming through good. So to do .items filter, checked. So if checked is true, it's going to only include the ones that are checked, and then map item and ID. If we went ahead and logged this out, and we gave it a refresh, it is returning an array as I would expect. Empty, those two are empty, those two are empty. So this last render, I'm guessing it's expecting that default selected keys to be set before. I think we're gonna have to do I think we have to do controlled, which is frustrating, but so we'll do this. We'll do use state. We're going to say new set, and I'm not going to set anything up. So now after this is done loading, we will have items, in which case we can then say, so if there's no items, nothing's going to be selected. So then an empty set would be fine. But if we do get something back and the effectively ends up being something in the vein of this, cost selected equals this. So tabs from store, items, we're going to filter, and then it's returning the ID. So now let's do mdn set. I don't remember what the syntax is, can we do I suppose I can just like, can I do an add and add all of them? Add, delete, difference, intersection, keys, union value. So add. It's chainable. That's not particularly helpful though. We can't give it multiple items though. So I guess what we do is we say, because this is a set selected keys. Guessing it's in here somewhere. There's a oh, we're gonna have to merge these pieces together. Controlled selection. So selected keys becomes this. And I'm not sure why TypeScript doesn't like that, but we'll come back to it. And on selection change, which we're already using. So that is setting selected keys. So we're going to end up having to do it here. So current items. So we can say a current set. We can call a set selected keys current set. Doesn't seem to like props, omit spectrum, list view, props, children. Interesting. Okay. So the props, but it's just omitting the children. Okay. So selected keys. Let's check this. Why does it not like this? Type set unknown is not assignable to type all or iterable key or undefined. This is kind of a pain. So it doesn't like that. Partly I'm guessing because this should be in all or iterable. Was it a iterable key or something? Yeah, iterable key. I guess it's what selection? Select. So it would be this selection. Got it imported already. So this is what it needs to be. So selected keys is selection. There we go. Okay. So it's okay with that. It's okay with that. And then current set. Okay. Okay. Sweet. So That handles selection change. If we give this a refresh, we can check to make sure that it appears it's still okay with that. We still don't get the loading, which is fine, because now tabs from store, we're doing items, filter. This will then end up giving us an array of strings, basically. So then we can say set selected keys as new set selected. Boy. All right. I'm not a big fan of like this because you're basically like firing off a set state within this load. But it works. All right. Well, I guess it is what it is, right? So we can get rid of our logs here. And I guess, so some of this is, I feel like the list view, the API could handle, it seems like the API is much more about the get. It doesn't handle the put. I think if it handles the put, so like we're talking HTTP terms here, get request, put request, or post request, I guess, is not handling the post or the put or the mutation. Really, it's just about getting the data in, and then it does everything internally. If you want to start controlling pieces, now you need to add the async list, but their keys and the lists are sort of separate pieces. And what's annoying is that this is async. So now you're having to deal with a specific hook to handle the async part of it. Luckily, they do have a hook for you, but it still doesn't do anything or help you out with the puts. And the fact that all of our calls to the store are also async mean that everything ends up having to be async, which ends up being painful. And then we get all of these, like, technically that ends up being a re-render, like this will end up being a re-render. But there's really nothing we can do about it because this is already going to exist. We've rendered 2 or 3 times already. Like if we do a refresh, we get 4 re-renders. We're seeing that 4 times. I don't see a quick way around that. Partly, I mean, I think a little bit on the React Spectrum API, but like the fact that this is always going to be async is kind of making things painful for us. So we like encapsulating some of this into, we could potentially do some like suspense something or other, or like encapsulating this and the like initial loading. This could potentially be a separate piece to where we're not actually like doing that and rendering it until like a suspense type thing, because we don't, these like first we get loading states here, idle, loading, loading. These first 3 states we don't actually care about. We only care about this third render. So the first render, we're getting, this is coming through and that's an idle, and then it kicks off and switches to loading. That's a re-render. But then the before we've completed, we've also done a state change. So that state change happens, it gets another re-render, which is why we have loading twice. first just when this gets kicked off, and then second one after that fires. And then it finally returns to idle. So by the time all of this is finished and we actually have our data loaded for the first time, we're on our fourth render already. So we could pull this out into like a suspense-y type thing, I think. Could potentially improve it. But now you're dealing with suspense API, which is less stable than I feel like I would like it to be, I guess. Not in a way of like what they're expecting suspense to be. It feels like it keeps changing, and like what it can do. Do you store the to-dos in a database? So we are using we have a little bit of abstraction here. We have this use context. We are dumping, and let me know if I need to explain a little bit more of the React. But if you've used React context before, we in this app component, we are setting up a React context with a provider and calling this hook. We've got this like use Tauri hook, which sets up a bunch of Tauri specific APIs. So we've got plugin store, menu, notifications, setup tray, setup shortcuts. To specifically answer your question, do you store the to-dos in a database? Technically, yes. Plugin store is like a key value store, basically just serializing that data to a string and dumping it in a file, of which we set here. Not in memory, because it does serialize it, actually store it like adjacent to the executable. I think it's next to the executable. I'm not, don't quote me on that part, but it store.bin is an actual file. We could go and actually maybe we go see if we can take a look see. Maybe in Target. If we're running debug builds, does it actually store it? So like here's our executable. I don't know if it stores it in like your user docs. No, that's like incremental build. 183 kilobytes. I don't think it would be that. It might, like once you actually do the release build and install it, it might put it next to it. I think the debug build is different, but I don't know where it stores it when you're like in debug mode. I mean, we could go figure it out, but I don't think it's necessary for your question. It's more of a, it's not strictly in memory. We are specifically calling the functions to get it from this file and to then write it back out. Store.set. Is there still a .manage, which you put in the Tauri builder to manage a shared state? So there's, and we actually had a little bit of this conversation when we first started. State is I mean, for good reasons, it's a little bit of an overloaded term. State can mean or be applicable to many things. In this case, we are using the plugin store, and we have the state persisting to that key value store that is dumped in a file. We can both write out to that file and pull from that file based off of this API. So this API is effectively a like helper methods over like file system write out and read and write to a file. So that's slightly separate than the state that you would have in your web view. And your web view state is slightly separate than what you would have in like the Rust side of things. So especially when you're talking multiple windows, every time you open up a new window, that web view has its own idea of what state should be. So the way that you might program something for a browser would be that a single tab is only aware of its own state, and it doesn't really care about state elsewhere. One sort of like advancement on that is if you're doing more of in the something that's on the spectrum of application, somebody might actually have two tabs open, and you want to be able to make sure that that state is shared between those. Typically, that's done with a server. So you do something like a WebSockets connection, talk to some server in the cloud or wherever you. That would sync the state between those two tabs. In a Tauri app, I think what you're saying is that shared state is actually being managed in Rust. So that state in Rust is then being pushed down to your web views, and each web view then is aware of the state that is being told by that by the Rust side of things. So if we look at I must have closed it. There's the plugins workspace. There we go. Are you using does SQLX do MongoDB? No. Are you using one of the plugins to do that, or is that is it the persistent scope? No. And asset scopes? Maybe no. Maybe. Are you using a plugin to do it? Hey Chris, good to see you. /wave. Store stronghold. I don't remember any Mongo things specifically. I'd be curious, Alex, what you're also hi, how's it going? I don't think I said thanks for stopping by. Are you using a specific plugin to do this? Because in some ways, like a plugin is just some boilerplate around or code that you can pull in that would do something that everybody else would end up doing too, but basically you're creating a connection to the MongoDB. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, no worries. If you in your browser create a connection to, like theoretically, you can create a connection directly to a Mongo database. Generally, you have more layers at this point. You have some sort of like API to help manage permissions and all that stuff. So there's multiple layers there, but theoretically, like in the browser, you could at some level like try to talk to a Mongo database. And that connection or that state there is being saved in the browser context. But then when you open up a new tab, you would get a new connection. And again, going back around, like you can then put layers in front of that. So you have WebSockets talking to some backend, which then handles all of the data communication in like the server side. And the WebSockets handle keeping those two tabs in sync. That's kind of the same thing of what you end up getting there, is where when you start up and use the database connection in the Rust side of things, now that Rust state or that Rust database connection can be shared between all the multiple web views. So it's just like shifting where your abstractions are. And what we were talking about at the beginning of the stream was Chow. How do we even get on that? It was I think we were just talking about local state, and then we got into local first and SQLite. Yeah. Chow was working on a project with SQLite. And I was saying that there's this whole like local first app movement, which I've been particularly interested in. but all the solutions are very much made for web browser to backend in the cloud to help you out with syncing. You don't have to use that architecture when you're working with Tauri, because the Rust backend can kind of do the same thing that the server in the cloud would be doing, which makes the peer-to-peer local syncing thing much more interesting, I think. Because one of the things that the local first architecture is sort of working towards is being able to keep these stores in sync. And there's something that needs to handle that syncing process. And if putting it in the cloud makes it convenient. But if you have two local apps that are both running Rust, the Rust side of things can also potentially do that, like peer-to-peer sync. You need to get into, I'm assuming WS stands for WebSockets. MQ, is that like a message queue? There we go. I mean, they're both, they both work. At this point, I feel like both of those architectures are pretty well battle tested, and there's the WebSockets are more, you seem to be more useful when you want to have like an ongoing connection to where you can do a lot of back and forth communication. So the like multiplayer apps seem to be very much they benefit very much from WebSockets, whereas a message queue is just you're getting a lot of throughput, and you need to handle that throughput, and a queue is the way to make that reasonable to deal with. Okay, so we got everything working here. What time we got? We're almost at 3 hours already. I was not. Let me just make sure I don't have any work messages. I would kind of like to do a little bit of CSS here quick just to finish it up, but oh, come on. My Mac Ethernet is like coming out of sleep lately. I don't know if they changed something, but it's it takes a while for it to come back, which is sort of annoying. Okay, I think we can go for just a little bit longer here. Yeah. Okay. So I think we have all the high level stuff I want here. There's delete that we can do, but for the most part, like we add a thing and we check it off. Like that's gonna be enough for what we want on the stream. We're gonna want to be able to add a new tab here. And I guess it would be nice not to have to like expand this window every time. How many to-do items are we going to do? Maybe this? Maybe we just make the window bigger. Let us default to doing the window a little bit bigger. And that'll then I don't have to worry about scrolling every time. So presuming that we're going to go with that. Let us double check. So there's flex and there's view. Then we got background colors, widths, and heights. We have app.ts is a layout. It's all layout, I think. So we have a view, which is 100. If we look at this, so our whole view is 100, and then we've got a flex, and then another view. If we go more like what's 2? Doesn't like that. 3. What might you like? Blue. 4, sure. Okay, I can dig that. And I think I might actually move it up here. My music ended like an hour ago. Feel weird just like talking. If it's just me talking, I need some background noise too. Now, padding. The thing that I haven't seen really in their docs is it feels like Flex and Grid is expected to be sort of that top level piece. I guess if we do a grid, I feel weird talking, says the streamer. The streamer that's been going for almost 3 hours talking, just blathering on. But fun blathering. the I guess if we do a grid, is that gonna kind of come? We can do a gap. Maybe I switch this to a grid. Direction column. Oh well, I mean we've got a gap right there. Rows, columns, height. Yeah, I feel like there's there. I mean, we've got a provider. Okay. Provider theme. We set up the provider, right? Okay. We've got their provider. Theme, default theme. I feel like I'm missing like a top level container or something like that. Like there's no padding here, which just feels odd. Can use it to build vertical. So like all of their examples just sort of have like it looks like there's padding in like in built into it. Um so there's some responsive stuff you can do. I guess do we literally just add a padding on the outside? Or maybe in some ways it's padding on the inside. Um so our home, we've got a layout and then a view. Children. What are our options here? And we've got a little bit of padding already within the table, but margin. That didn't seem to do much. The real padding is the slightly adjusted version of that is the real padding is the cakes, the sweets that we've added and eaten along the way. The real padding comes from that sweet tooth that can never be satiated. Okay, that looks better. I think I'm okay with that. Clear changes this. We do this. There we can probably do like an action group or something like that over here. I'm okay with the coloring. If we Let's see, what am I doing? What am I doing? Ooh, tabs. Look at the tabs. Tabs. Content selection. Do we have any visual options? I don't really see any examples to, oh, what is this? Disabled. Ah, okay. Ah, it's just got two tab components next to each other. I thought they were like, oh, oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know that I would want that, but icons. Here we go. Add tab, remove tab. Perfect. This is what I was hoping for. Now, the promise of, except it's not going to be quite it, but the promise of using a UI library means that I can copy and paste this. Tab list, so it's strictly just straight up just adjacent to it. Kind of interesting. Tabs, and it's within, oh, it's right underneath tab list. So if I do that, they don't list imports, so I have to import my own disabled keys. Ah, so when tabs are less than, okay, well, I mean, key remove, key add. If tabs.length is 1, then disable remove. Got it. And then it's firing off these functions, add tab and remove tab. So we need to then do this. So we can say if items.length equals 1, turn that off. And this is going to, it's calling add tabs and remove tabs. So the problem with this is that, whoa, weird. Is that because it's, why is it underneath? Not doing anything fancy here. Div tab, so we got some flex stuff built into it. Nope. Tabs, items, tab, oh, this whole thing is wrapped in a flex. That's what I missed. So this whole piece here is a flex. So we have spectrum tabs in our case, and then we've got a flex. And within the flex, we have a tab list and our, why are you complaining? Flex, import, update. There we go. So we have an add and a remove. Our add is not doing anything right now because we don't have those functions. So the problem here that we're going to run into is that I could put the add or remove here, but our actual like store state is outside of this in here. So we're giving it tabs and we're giving it an items. So I think what I do is And since we're just gonna call it an any for the moment, because this is going to be a little bit more involved than I'm hoping for. So now we've got we're loading these tabs from the store. So now if we add a tab, we need to update this, and it's like same exact issue that we had over in our actual to-do list items. I'm gonna actually make that a const. Add. I don't really remember what my API was now. Add tab. Remove tab is remove tab. So add tab is going to be a use words callback. Use callback. So now use callback. Is that ever gonna need to change? So it's going to be something in the vein of this, but we've got a list. So we can actually say tabs.append, and our tab list item is this. So we need an ID and a title. So we're going to say const new tab equals. And right now it's just stream one. So I think I'm going to do dealing with the form. We're going to do the date. ID is title one. New tab, tab.append. And we're going to say ID is going to be date.now. And title is, yeah, sure, why not? Technically, those will end up being different, I think, but dot to string. Remove tab is not defined. Yep, that makes sense. And right now I don't have a good way to deal with that, so we're going to say remove tab is we're basically just going to no op. So now, yeah, every time we add a tab, we're going to get a new thing with a different list. And see, there's this bit of lag because it's literally loading it from the file, which is that key value store benefit, but then also like, really, we want optimistic updates? We have the stores, or we have the state saved. I mean, just we could like move it up the tree, and it would. You don't need to be recalling it from the file every time. But in reality, I'm never going to be I'm really not going to be like deleting these. move, reload, remove. So I can remove my key. I can move items. I can insert error. That are currently in the set of selected items. Okay, so I can remove selected items. Okay, I don't mind that actually. That might be the easiest. So if I add a couple tabs, I can click this one and hit remove. Tabs, use callback, remove selected items. Async. Not a huge fan of all these, like the extra lines in there, but interesting. Whoop, that's not what I meant to do. Ah, looks like there's an error. No. It is not removing it. Removes all items from the list that are currently in the set of selected items. This must be a this controlled. Can't perform it on an unmounted. Oh, is it like not re-rendering it? Interesting. Okay, well, I don't really care too much about that right now. I think like this kind of stuff, it's exactly what we did when we were doing this. Oh, that's a bit annoying. Why did we have that white section there? It's the same issue that we had here. We have to wire it up to the store, but then we also need to update the. So like we also what we're doing tabs.append. So then we also need to do in the same thing. So here it's going to give us an items. So we need to do a. Is there a store dot? Oh. Set save values. Has keys load. I guess set is the only oh, it's we're setting a new key. Ah, yeah, okay, yeah. So here we'd be doing this. We're just gonna overwrite that for the moment. This needs to be an await, and we need a data here because this is gonna be const. So we have the new tab. So we could probably just directly write in here and say items and do this and say tabs the items and new tab. So refresh, add tab, refresh, still stays there. So we get that every time we click add tab, we are both writing it to the local state and to the store state. And anytime we reload the page, we are actually loading this tab. This tab is aware of what ID it is and passing it down to here. So we get this like waterfall, which is unfortunate. It's loading that and then loading this. And both of those are loading and writing both to local state and writing to this key value store, like on the file system, which is why we get in the same way that we would be doing like API calls out, we're getting this like waterfall effect. So we can improve some of the waterfall effect by being a little bit more smart about how we're rendering it or how we're potentially storing it. But all of these store items here are async. And our API that we have with React Spectrum doesn't really seem to handle the puts or the posts. It helps with the gets, but not when you do an append. So we're basically like rewriting this multiple times. So like none of it ends up being really convenient to package together in a way that we can quickly both update a store and update local state. So like the idea would be to update local state and do the store update optimistically in the background. And like once this app is loaded, first load, sure, I have to pull from key value store on the file system. But otherwise from there, I should be able to only use the local state. And the only thing that would be happening would be this like background like sync process into that key value store. But as it is right now, the code that we have in the components that we're using don't seem to make that easy. We can slowly wire that in, but this works for the moment, and there's can be very minimal use cases where I'm actually doing this. So, I mean, we'll live with it. It'll work. I think that's probably going to be good for what we're trying to accomplish today. Let's go ahead and give it a run in real mode. What it's actually going to end up looking like. And at least we'll be able to have something that we can start using on stream. So visible false, decorations false. My height I'm probably gonna end up making a little bit bigger, and we'll do this, something like this, and there. I hit save twice, so we might get an outdated buildable. Maybe not. It looks like there was 2 compiles. So we don't see anything popping up now because it's here. So if we click this, oh, I turned off all that too. That is a problem. So set up tray. So I don't need that right now. I do want the hiding. Oh, the click type stuff changed, I think. Yes. Yes. Okay, let's see if we can deal with that real quick. So it's visible. We go here. If I click, I'm not getting any. That is interesting. So setup tray. The tray should have an action. We should be logging out that event. It doesn't seem to be reacting to clicks at all. All right, this render method thing is kind of annoying. Let's see if we, and I don't know why. I don't know why we're getting that right now. It's going to be even more annoying to deal with it here. So these tabs should have an ID. Tab ID, tab title. Okay, you need to go away. Can we fix this right quick? We're loading from the store. Okay, so we're throwing an error if there's nothing in there. And in our setup, we were making certain that in our hook setup, we were making certain that we had this. So we should have a stream one and a title. Let's do a quick reset. Setup store. So now, no data. All right. I don't know why each child on the list should have a unique key prop. We are using tabs. I guess I don't really need that in there. And we're giving it an items. We got a in. We have a tabs component. So we're doing an items.map. And yep, so the tab list on the top does not have a, I guess either just this. So yeah, I guess we have to do that. Yeah, the two, I know. It's, I can't move it. I guess I can resize it. Here, we'll just make it really small. Because it's on top. But the drag region is like not clickable right now. I don't know why. We were trying to get the drag region to be clickable so I could move it. So then we put on the decorations, window decorations, so I could at least move the dang thing. So yes, what you were seeing was what I was seeing. I was just working around it. And then I guess we probably want to do that here too. Okay, that I think is at least going to get rid of that. There we go. Now, why are we not getting any click events? Store, home app, config, setup tray, click type. So setup tray, we are doing new menu with a tray icon, set menu. Where's action set? Action is on the tray icon. So we should be getting an event. If we just comment all that out, maybe there's some weird like error happening that's hiding it. Feels weird, but now we have lots of icons and I don't know which one to click. API tray. It's possible that like the API changed enough that it broke what we were doing. Gotta get those power toy hotkeys in the fingers. That's actually, I don't know if that would work on that. It might. I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about that. But also like, I don't even remember what the hotkey is. I swear, like the context. I think I've told Chris about this, but keyboard. I have like generic keys in there. I mean, it's upside down. We can make it less upside down, but um, which works fine because they're just keys, and I can switch between Mac mode and Windows mode. But then I forget what the keys do, and some functions the keys are flip flopped. On Mac, it's one key combination, and on Windows, it's a slightly different key combination. I mix it up all the time, which is why I end up clicking a lot on stream, I think, because every time I try to do a keyboard shortcut, I default to the one that I've used more often lately, which tends to always be in Mac, which is what I'm working on for the day job stuff. I just need to take the time to sit down and optimize it, but time is always elusive. And it hasn't been painful enough to deal with. I just complain about it on stream a little bit. Trey. This would be under API. Yeah, API tray. API tray. Set icon. Now, yeah, so there should be an action, a handler for an event on the tray. So I'm giving it an does it not look async? So tray icon new. That would feel weird to me. Creation options. Okay, so ID menu, temp directory path, title, tooltip. It seems like it's all there because I can set the tooltip there. Why am I not getting any click events? It must be like a bug or something like that. Is that what we determined? It has become content. I don't know why we're not getting click events. We ran into the, or we noted this before. But somewhere in the template to pulling it in here and running with it here, I think we have updated it. And I think we updated to a version which is not handling click events. That appears to be the case. So we might need to do an update. I'll just deal with that off stream. I don't really feel like messing around with it more because it's probably just going to be a bunch of version updates and playing around with and checking issues or whatever. I think we've got enough here to at least start using it on stream. Some of these tab names might not be ideal, but I might clean it up a little bit off stream so we can start putting it down there. We'll run it. We'll add to-do items as we're going. We'll start off, and I want to deal with this too. I do not want save data. Stop saving data. So we'll end up basically using this as a way to, like, when we start the stream, we'll talk about all the things that we want to do. And then we can just add them to the list. So then as we go, we can, check them off. And then if we happen to do a refresh, then it comes back. So every stream, so every stream day, I can basically add a new tab, and we can have like a running list of tabs to where, so if we add a tab, then how do we keyboard shortcut over? Can you not? No. Yeah, this is still. It don't like that because it's loading from the file system. So things we can improve. It is at least functional, at least after I deal with this this tray part, because I want to be able to click it, and then I'll have to figure out a keyboard shortcut to pop it up too. So between those two things, we'll have ways to make it visible, and then we can add to it as we go. And for any folks jumping in the middle of the stream or end of the stream, we can it's an easy way to say, ta-da, this is what we've done. And it's pretty fun example, both with what we can do with Tauri, but what we've also done with the template. And that template that I keep talking about, I'll drop another linky link. It will be this. So if y'all are interested in making a tray app, much like we've done for the past like 2 months, I guess, click that button. Let me know what you let me know what you end up making. I'm very interested to see what y'all create. I don't know what we're gonna do next week. There is a couple of things that we've talked about that I'm clearly interested in, because we digressed for like 20 minutes at least each time. But testing and local state / local first type things. And I think part of what might end up coming up with those is how to do plugins in Tauri, specifically V2. I think those are probably going to be some near-term topics here. We do have another short list too that we made on stream a few months ago now, so I'll check that out. But I need to. I'm hoping to lay out a little bit more of a schedule and put some of these up more than the day before. But I think we've got something like 3, 4, 5 topics that are on the short list that I could throw up right away. And there are also some streams that I want to get planned here that we haven't. Things just haven't worked out. But I have a couple guests that I want to bring on, but not gonna announce anything until that is a little bit more set in stone. So, as always, have a great rest of your week. Happy Tuesday, I guess. And I will see you next week. Bye.